The Israeli military says the 1 million residents in North Gaza should leave within 24 hours as it heralds a ground operation in the coming days. The number of casualties and refugees are snowballing in that area, triggered by an Israeli retaliation against the Hamas attack. We take a closer look at the nuclear-powered USS Ronald Reagan that has docked in South Korea. What's it like and the purpose of the visit against which North Korea fires back. The latest Green Book remains optimistic about betterment in a slowing economy, though it says the recent conflict in the Middle East could widen uncertainties. It's October 13th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We continue with our coverage of Gaza, where the Israeli military has ordered a population in the north of the enclave to move to the south within 24 hours. This as the ground operation is expected in the coming days. The number of casualties and refugees is already snowballing in that area after days of the Israel-Hamas war. Park Go-nu has the latest.
Buildings have been destroyed beyond all recognition in Gaza under a continuous bombardment from the Israel Defense Force in the 6 days since the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas launched a murderous attack on Israel. Now, the IDF has notified the United Nations that from midnight on Friday, 1.1 million people living in northern Gaza must relocate to the south of the Wadi Gaza Nature Reserve within the next 24 hours. According to AP, the IDF's order indicates an impending ground offensive in Gaza City, the enclave's largest city, within a few days, even though the Israeli military has not confirmed this. This warning also applies to UN staff and those sheltering in UN facilities there. A UN spokesperson in New York said the organization considers it impossible for such a movement to take place without devastating humanitarian consequences. The spokesperson added the UN strongly appeals for any such order, if confirmed, to be rescinded, avoiding what could transform what is already a tragedy into a calamitous situation. The ongoing Israel-Hamas war has already left over 10,000 people injured and up to 5,000 dead on both sides. Civilian deaths in Gaza especially have been rising, following the IDF completely cutting off Gaza and halting water, fuel, electricity, and food supplies. The IDF said it would maintain its siege until Hamas frees the 150 hostages it took during the attacks on Israeli settlements and towns. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said there are over 420,000 displaced people in the Gaza Strip who have lost their homes as of Thursday local time. This was an increase of more than 80,000 compared to the day before. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
In the meantime, the recent surprise attack by Hamas on Israel has raised questions of failure and accountability within the Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. Choi Soo-hyung explains.
There is growing criticism of the Benjamin Netanyahu government in Israel for failing to prevent a surprise attack by Hamas on October 7th. The daily Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported on Thursday local time that Israeli Education Minister Yoav Kesh said that this incident happened under the current government and they will take responsibility for it. The minister also emphasized that no one can escape responsibility, including himself as a government member. This is the first time a cabinet member has publicly admitted to government's responsibility. Before this, cabinet members had generally avoided giving public statements about the Hamas attack. On the same day, the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, approved of the emergency united government, including a number of centrist opposition lawmakers, with a vote of 66 in favor and 4 against. However, the leader of the largest opposition party, former Prime Minister Yair Lapid, refused to participate, though he mentioned that he would support war efforts from outside the government, considering the country was in a wartime situation. Previously, Netanyahu's government had passed a law eliminating the Supreme Court's authority to overturn government decisions it considered irrational, reducing the judiciary's powers. Netanyahu argued this was to prevent judicial interference in politics, but the move faced intense opposition in Israel and from abroad. The centrist opposition National Unity Party also vigorously opposed the legislative changes, but its leader, Benny Gantz, emphasized the party's support for the war. Renowned Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari wrote in a column for the Washington Post that many military officers and experts had warned the government that Netanyahu's policies were putting Israel in danger by eroding its deterrence power. Choi Arirang News.
Shifting gears, for the second time this year, a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier has docked in South Korea's southern port city of Busan, marking the 70th anniversary of the Seoul-Washington alliance. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji explains what this arrival means for the region.
In a show of force against North Korea, the USS Ronald Reagan and its battle group are currently in Busan for a 5-day visit. This is the first time in about 7 months that a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is in South Korea, since the USS Nimitz docked at Busan in late March. Before arriving on Thursday earlier this week, it took part in a trilateral maritime drill with South Korea and Japan in international waters southeast of Jeju Island. Seoul's defense ministry says the visit is part of Washington's commitment to enhancing regular visibility of U.S. strategic assets to the Korean peninsula in response to North Korea's advancing nuclear program. A spokesperson for the carrier strike group said that although the U.S. Navy aircraft carriers are deployed to South Korea frequently, the timing of this visit makes it more special.
This visit is special because it takes place near the 70th anniversary of the Mutual Defense Treaty between our countries.
He added they aim to build interoperability at sea towards shared goals and a free and open Indo-Pacific. While the carrier stays in Busan until next Monday, U.S. Navy sailors will be taking part in community relations events to build relationships between the two countries' naval forces and their people. Meanwhile, the arrival of the aircraft carrier enraged North Korea, which views the deployment of such a powerful U.S. military asset as a major security threat. Its state media on Friday threatened to stage the most powerful and rapid first strike, saying that its nuclear doctrine allows the regime to take necessary actions, such as preemptive use of nuclear arms, in case it believes a nuclear attack is imminent. The last time the USS Ronald Reagan came to South Korea in September last year, the North conducted ballistic missile tests to protest. So there is a possibility that the regime may engage in more provocations while the carrier is in Busan. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea is on pace to deploy nuclear-armed ICBMs that could challenge U.S. missile defenses. This observation was shared in a report by the U.S. Congressional Commission on Strategic Posture on Thursday local time. The report also warns of a potential 7th nuclear test by the regime and that its chemical and biological weapons programs continue to raise much concern. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is expected to remain committed to advancing the regime's nuclear arsenal as a centerpiece of his security structure. President Yoon Suk-yeol has called for South Korea and Japan to elevate their ties to an all-time high based on the will of the people in both countries. Yoon on Friday met with representatives from the Korea-Japan Association and the Japan-Korea Friendship Association, marking the 25th anniversary of a 1998 document declared by then-President Kim Dae-jung and then-Japanese Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi. The president said the two countries can go beyond previous high points in their relationship if they are able to build on exchanges and cooperation as they share mutual values and interests. Yoon noted air traffic and people-to-people exchanges between the two countries are recovering rapidly, as he also lauded various inter-provincial exchanges. South Korea's economic slowdown continues to ease thanks to signs of a rebound in exports and manufacturing. That's according to the nation's finance ministry. But uncertainties remain following the recent unrest in the Middle East. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young with the details.
South Korea's economic slowdown is easing, according to the finance minister's latest Green Book released on Friday. The minister's description of the economic slowdown has changed to gradually easing from the previous report's partially easing. This is mainly due to signs of a rebound in manufacturing production and exports. The manufacturing production index in August increased by 5.6% from the previous month, marking a rise for the first time in 3 months. Particularly noteworthy was the significant rebound of 13.4% in the chip industry. Exports in the third quarter decreased by 9.8% on-year, the lowest decline since the fourth quarter of last year when exports began to decline on a quarterly basis. The finance ministry also expressed optimism for the tourism sector, citing last month's on-year growth of over 800% in the number of Chinese tourists. However, the ministry has made it clear that this does not necessarily imply a complete economic recovery. It expressed greater caution regarding external factors and inflation compared to last month's report, citing uncertainties like rising volatility in global oil prices. Regarding inflation, it said the country has seen a gradual downtrend in prices, though consumer prices in September recorded their highest on-year increase in 5 months of 3.7%. The government evaluates that uncertainties remain due to the war in Ukraine and the outbreak of military conflict in the Middle East, as this could lead to more volatility in raw material prices.
As Israel and Palestine are not oil-producing nations and are geographically distant from the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil trading route, it's expected that the impact on global oil prices, the financial markets, and the real economy will be limited. However, given the uncertainty regarding the potential escalation of the conflict, the South Korean government is remaining vigilant and considering all possibilities.
The government plans to control inflation by managing risks from both home and abroad in order to make sure people's livelihoods aren't heavily impacted. It also expressed its commitment to boosting domestic demand, investment, and exports while improving the economic structure. 신하영, Arirang News.
Findings for the month of September show employment here in Korea expanded remarkably on-year. But there have been fewer jobs in the manufacturing sector and for young adults. An Song-jin has numbers.
According to Statistics Korea on Friday, 28.7 million people were employed in South Korea in September. That figure is an increase of more than 300,000 compared to the same month the year before. It's the first time since June that the on-year increase rate has exceeded 300,000 after the figure dipped to the 200,000 range in July and August. The employment rate last month reached a record high for any September since records began being compiled in 1982. The rate was mainly driven by workers in their 30s who saw an on-year increase of 1.5 percentage points, and those aged 60 and above, with the figure for that group rising 0.9 percentage points from last year. However, youth employment has continued its decline for the 11th consecutive month, with an on-year decrease of 89,000 for the 15 to 29 age bracket. An official from Statistics Korea attributed this to high youth employment last year and decreased population in that demographic, emphasizing the need to focus on the employment rate rather than the number.
The number of people employed last September was high, and although that number decreased, it was due to the base effect. Also, a basic change in population structure should also be taken into consideration.
Looking at individual sectors, employment in the healthcare and social assistance sector, as well as accommodation and restaurant services, saw an increase, while manufacturing and wholesale and retail sectors saw a dip.
Not all manufacturing sectors are seeing a decline. Though digital products and metal processing are decreasing, the automotive and medical sectors are continuing to show an increasing trend in employment.
And unemployment figures dropped to the lowest for any September since 2009 to 660,000. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's Finance Minister Choo and U.S. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen met in Morocco to discuss geopolitical uncertainties and bilateral economic cooperation. The two policymakers met on Thursday on the margins of the IMF and World Bank annual meetings. Although their exact agenda was not disclosed, it's said that the economic impact of the Israeli-Hamas conflict and the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act was discussed at length. Choo expressed gratitude to the U.S. government for allowing the supply of U.S. devices into Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix semiconductor factories in China. U.S. consumer prices accelerated slightly faster than expected in September, keeping inflation a centerpiece for policymakers there when it comes to setting its key rate. Lee Seung-jae has more.
According to the latest data released Thursday by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, U.S. consumer prices remained high in September due to rising gas and rent costs. The September Consumer Price Index rose 3.7% on-year, holding steady with August's on-year gains, but slightly higher than economists' expectations of a 3.6% rise. On-month, inflation was up 0.4%. Statistics also show that the Shelter Index, which is largely a measurement of rental leases, as well as the implicit rental value of owner-occupied properties, accounted for 70% of the monthly core increase and more than half of the overall monthly increase. If the rise in shelter prices is removed from the overall CPI, core CPI rose just 0.1% for the month and is up 2% on-year, the lowest annual increase that the index has recorded since March 2021. Also, food price inflation is at its lowest rate since March 2021, matching the month's on-year rise of 3.7%. It also marks the first time since early 2022 that food prices did not outpace overall inflation. Meanwhile, U.S. stocks sank on Thursday, ending a 4-day streak due to the unexpectedly high inflation reading, which sparked concern about higher interest rates by the U.S. Fed before the end of the year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 0.5%, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq also sinking 0.6% on the day. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's time for our weekly arts and culture segment. Joining us in the studio is our culture correspondent, Song Yoo-jin. Thank God it's Friday.
Happy Friday, Jungmin.
What do you have for us this week, Yoo-jin?
Well, Jungmin, you may recall that a couple of days ago, I went to an exhibition that used Lego blocks to recreate Korean cultural heritage, and I really had a good time there. And while I was there, I found out that using Lego blocks as a medium of artistic expression, which is often referred to as Lego art, has sort of become a trend in the artistic world. So for this week, I delved into the evolution of these blocks from a simple toy to, well, a form of art. It's often said that Lego blocks are a bridge to boundless creativity. With these small pieces of plastic and a touch of imagination, you can basically make anything you want. This limitless potential has allowed Lego to evolve into a recognized art form.
There are a couple of factors in Lego's transition from a toy to an art form. First, the brand never confined itself to toys. It collaborated with artists and released new editions, broadening its appeal to adults and artists. And then there's a growing trend of kidults, adults playing with and collecting toys like Lego, which were once seen as something just for kids.
Recent data shows the astounding growth of South Korea's kidult market, which includes Lego, toy figures, and video games, tripling from 500 billion Korean won in 2014 to 1.6 trillion won in 2021. As Lego gains popularity across a wider range of age groups, it's inspiring people to explore new creative horizons. Like artist So Jin-ho or Colin Jin. He's the first to recreate the traditional Korean ancestral ritual 종묘 제례악, a UNESCO cultural heritage, with Lego blocks. So's exhibition displays around 100 Korean cultural heritage and landmarks in Lego versions. These include traditional Korean games like pogorak from the Goryeo dynasty, folk dances, and a pop-up book of Gwanghwamun Gate in Seoul.
And I love kind of when tradition influences the music. And I think this is quite similar, that basically old Korean tradition are kind of playfully combined with the modern tool. And
what captures the visitor's attention more is that So used straight angled blocks to craft smooth curved lines.
People often have this fixed idea that blocks must fit together perfectly. But if you let go of that thought, you can create curved lines like this.
There are usually instructions for Lego blocks. The fact that the artist came up with these shapes on his own, especially creating Korean traditional models and expressing curves, is truly remarkable.
This is an example of how unconventional materials and innovative ideas can redefine the concept of art.
I noticed a fusion of modern Western toys with traditional Eastern elements.
You're absolutely right, Tongmin. And to talk more about this Lego artist, Colin Jin, he was actually inspired by his wife's interest in Korean history, which led him to create his first piece related to Korean history and cultural heritage, which was his Lego version of the Korean traditional folk dance, Seungmu. So to talk a bit about more, his exploration of history books and resources while creating this piece really ignited a passion within him to create more. And what also really motivated him to create more pieces related to Korean culture and traditional cultural heritage was the fact that there's been actually only one Lego set related to Korea, which was the Lego version of the Sungnaemun Gate or the Namdaemun Gate, which was released in 2012, so 11 years ago. So Colin Jin really wanted to promote Korean traditional beauty to a wider audience through his work.
And for those who want to know more about this exhibition, tell us more.
Sure. So this exhibition is titled Colin Jin's Historical Lego, and it opened just this Wednesday, and it will run for 2 weeks, so until October 25th. Is taking place at the Boriham Exhibition Hall in Central Seoul. For those who are interested, it's open every day from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the second floor that was shown in my report, it displays pieces related to Korean traditional culture. But on the third floor, the artist gave a completely new contemporary twist, like Lego lamps, pencil sharpeners, and even USBs. That was all made by the artist himself without relying on any sort of instructions or manuals.
Well noted. Thank you, Yujin.
Thank you.
It has been pleasantly mild over the past few days, but the stretch of fall weather will be on borrowed time as a low-pressure system will start to push in overnight. This will keep most parts of South Korea blustery and unsettled. On Sunday, quiet conditions will make a return with partly cloudy to overcast skies. As for the overall amount of rainfall, central regions, including the Seoul metropolitan area, Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do provinces will see 5 to 40. Surrounding regions, including Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, will see around 5 to 20 millimeters. In between tomorrow's daytime and evening hours, locally heavy downpours of 20 millimeters per hour are possible. Lightning and gusty winds are in the forecast from time to time. Showers will start from northern central regions tomorrow. As for the readings, Seoul will start off at 14 degrees Celsius. Highs in Seoul get up to 19 degrees, Daejeon and Gwangju 21. Busan will be topping out at 24 degrees. After the rain tomorrow, wide temperature gaps will prevail again. Make sure to dress in layers and be careful not to catch a cold. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. a panel session coming up.